Bugonia is very frustrating. If you don't already know, or you didn't see my video earlier this year, Bugonia is actually a remake of a 2003 cult classic South Korean film, Save the Green Planet. I think that information is starting to slowly become more known, but as I stated in my video on that movie, I was pretty worried about this remake because the original is such an ahead of its time, profound, and extremely unique film. Of course, I highly recommend that you watch that video because it provides a lot of context on my thoughts and then the story overall. I honestly believe it'll change how you feel about Bugonia. Shameless plug, I know, but that video will expand on all of the things that I bring up today. Now yes, I understand that this is gonna make me sound like a pretentious hipster, but there was just a certain charm to Save the Green Planet that I don't think could ever be replicated, and its message, being 22 years in already, would sound pretty redundant in 2025. So I thought Bugonia had to either be vastly different with a new spin, or it should have just bolstered the original to make a more grandiose version of the same story, applying a larger budget and just more resources. But Yorgos didn't fully commit to either of those things, making this a very watered down adaptation that took away so much from the original and becoming this pseudo-intellectual film with a more unclear message. And not less to say, I would just argue not said in the right way. But this is of course all in comparison to Save the Green Planet, which watching that movie completely altered my experience with Bugonia. I can't not address that fact, but I think my criticisms would still be the same if I hadn't seen it. And before we get into it, I do have to say Bugonia was a well-made, very well-crafted film with some very cool striking imagery, good acting, and some good things to take away. But again, I know I'm being that pretentious hipster when I say this. It's very annoying to see people calling this a modern masterpiece, when it was done so much better over 2 decades ago from a film that got little to no recognition. The problems for me started right at the beginning of the movie. In Save the Green Planet, we get a monologue of our main character Lee Byung talking about his alien conspiracies and giving you all the exposition that you need to know. We then get one quick scene of the CEO, just him being a snobby rich asshole to a valet driver, and this paired with what we factually know from the monologue lets you instantly know that this is a bad guy. Quick and simple, an easy character to hate, and Lee Byung kidnaps him within the first 5 minutes. It gets right into the action. Now in Bugonia, they dragged so much in the first half. We spend so much time with the CEO, this time it's Michelle played by Emma Stone, and this becomes a trend and problem throughout where we focus so much on her that she becomes more human. This character, no matter if it's portrayed as a man, woman, healthcare CEO, or tech CEO, has to be an idea, a symbol that represents a larger corporate evil. I don't need more time with them because my idea of who they are and why they are here is already solidified. And the character we need to focus on is Teddy, bringing us the biggest issue that I had with Bugonia. The quote that I used to summarize or represent Save the Green Planet was, "If society created the monster, is that person still a monster?" Lee Byung is a bad guy. He's a serial killer at this point, he abuses drugs, he obviously kidnaps a man, and he is an unreliable narrator to the story because of how troubled and honestly crazy he is. He has completely gone off the deep end with conspiracies and his hatred for the powers that be. But he at the very least is a good intentioned character with some level of sympathy. Now Teddy on the other hand, has almost no room for sympathy. Now I also want to address the obvious, yes this is a remake and an adaptation, it doesn't have to follow the story beat for beat, but I'm going to get into this later, they follow the story beat for beat a lot. But anyway, Teddy does have the same story of his mother being a victim to the greed and carelessness of the CEO and her company, that part they did keep. But his insanity and off the deep nature stems from other things, with his mother being kind of crazy and, we'll just say off. He was also sexually abused by his male babysitter played by Stavros, and I'm still not too sure how I feel about how they dealt with that. And then he has been being fed harmful rhetoric from the internet that has completely warped his mind. Lee Byung was almost solely affected by the corporate evils and the terrible parts of society and humanity. His dad died right in front of him during a mining accident, his mother was put into a coma due to negligent drug trials, he gets bullied by the townsfolk, and a workplace riot from the same company that the CEO owns killed his girlfriend right in front of his eyes as she was beaten by security. Life had only given him reason to be spiteful, but he still had some humanity left to him. He went out on the town and interacted with people, he kept a job, he had a very loving girlfriend with Soo-nee, which I will touch more on later about the erasure of her character, and he had hobbies and passions like beekeeping and mannequin making. He was so much more layered, and we focused so much time on peeling back those layers rather than shifting focus and humanizing the symbol for what we, the audience, should be fighting against. Now, as we see later, they do make Michelle more of an evil character, but it's hard to justify our hatred for her after 1. Seeing her attacked by a man, a very visceral image to witness, 2. She blames society for turning her into the person she is, which could have been interesting if explored more, and 3. The ending, which we will get into in a second. It also kind of came off as cheap and a little corny, to be honest. The whole I'm a winner and you're a loser, it's a little too on the nose. It also comes in really late into the movie. But this is the dynamic. A crazy person who you don't know if you can trust, and a on the surface evil person who is getting undeserved torture. It's supposed to be a hard back and forth guessing game until you get the reveal of who is truly right. But even then, you question if the means to an end were worth it. I mean, Lee Byung literally crucifies the CEO. So if you thought Bugonia was messed up, I think Save the Green Planet, even though it is campier and kind of funnier, they don't hold anything back. And now I gotta give a spoiler warning for those who haven't seen either, but we gotta talk about the alien aspect. Save the Green Planet gives us more suspension of disbelief on if the CEO is really an alien. Lee Byung talks so much about his research, and it is detailed to the point where you might actually believe that he is right. Yes, his reasoning all stems from personal tragedy, but it's a more general and widely believed reality. Why do these terrible things happen? Maybe it's because of a larger power. Even if it's not aliens, it's still the evil powers that be. Whereas with Teddy, this just feels like a personal attack against Michelle. It's nearly impossible to side with him, and this just makes the reveal that he was right, she was an alien, feel very empty. And honestly, they don't really spend that much time talking about aliens to where it kind of just feels like a Buffalo Bill side plot. And then we got Michelle. Her having this sad reaction to ending Earth's existence as if she does see the good in humanity does not hit at all, at least for me. It makes her less representative of a larger evil, less of social commentary, and just muddies the water even more. The CEO in Save the Green Planet and his fellow aliens are purely scientific and very clinical. This was all based on experiments, no emotions, and it just shows how small we, the average human, are in comparison to the bigger picture. And honestly, that makes it a lot scarier and more of a horror movie. Granted, neither of them really have a hopeful ending, but to know that they have no emotion towards us, we just are practically bugs, that's horrific. And Bugonia does touch on that, especially with the worker bee metaphor that they focus on, which I think was done semi-well. It did add a new layer, but it also had a different message to it. And then of course the ending sequence, which I actually really did enjoy. I thought that was some of the best imagery I've seen this year. But I bring all of this up to say, the original message was lost. I would need some more watches to definitively say what I think the message of Bugonia is. I have my own interpretations, but I don't like saying this is what the movie meant. But with Save the Green Planet, I was able to take away clearer messages that have since been proven to be prophetic. Lee Byung is more akin to a Luigi Mangione in real life, or you could even compare it to One Battle After Another. Anti-heroes who are fighting for the people, revolting against the evils of the world, no matter the cost. But then they have layers to them that make you question your own beliefs and their own intentions. Lee Byung is doing what he's doing to save humanity, to save his mother, his girlfriend, and the future of the Earth. Teddy claims this, but I don't really believe him enough. I needed more reason to understand him. Even Michelle needed more reason to understand him. There's this great scene in the original where the CEO finds Lee Byung's life story written in journals and has a full-on emotional breakdown trying to comprehend what his alien race and society has done to this man. And they completely remove that in Bugonia, swapping it out with more reasons to dislike and stray away from Teddy as she finds evidence of his prior victims. I'm not trying to say the main character is a good guy by any means, but if you want to have a back and forth guessing game, you gotta have reasons to side with both people. But I want to leave the rest of my commentary on the social commentary to Bugonia for a later video, potentially. I don't know, I just feel like I need a rewatch and more time to fully digest this remake. Because as of now, it honestly felt like a product of this recent trend of social commentary movies that don't really say anything new. And they feel pretentious, almost like the directors are sitting there knowing people will find this profound, and overall they have these jumbled messages. And very surface level messages too. They truly dumbed down the original to make it easier to watch. Visually they didn't. I mean, Bugonia does do a good job at some striking, very jarring imagery. But the story and the message, in my opinion, say I'm a hater, it was very dumbed down. And that's what truly made me so gung-ho about Save the Green Planet. How they treated the source material in Bugonia. They would follow the story beat for beat, just to introduce a new topic that could have been explored further and created a new take, just to turn around and go right back to following the original story, wasting time on unnecessary plot points and removing the substance of the original plot points. Save the Green Planet does have a lot going on, but they give everything the right amount of time and tie everything up with a very neat bow. They have this very entertaining, interesting, and honestly hilarious B-plot of two detectives trying to solve the kidnapping and find the CEO. The main detective even relates to Lee Byung in a very great scene. Lee Byung has a girlfriend with Soo-nee, which is one of the best parts of the original, and it adds a whole new dynamic to his character, and these add great perspectives on what's happening. Now, I understand how the original can be a lot tonally and just the sheer amount of what's going on, but it adds to the wackiness and craziness of what we are witnessing and makes it so much more interesting. And while Bugonia is tense, I found the conversations between Teddy and Michelle, and again the first 2/3 of the movie, to just be a drag. The pacing was one of my biggest issues. I mean, this felt way too long. It does pay off well in the end. I can't lie, I did actually really enjoy the last third of Bugonia, but I feel like this is indicative of Yorgos watering down the original to make it more palatable, message-wise and very much story-wise. But there were some pretty good parts to Bugonia. I know I'm being a straight hater right now, but the movie's not terrible. Overall, I honestly did enjoy it. The imagery and overall cinematography was again some of the best that I've seen this year. I really like the surreal black and white sequences that I think put us a little more into Teddy's mind and made us dive deeper into the craziness of this story. And overall, they were very striking images that very much landed. But we only got 2 of them. I think we could have done at least like 2 or 3 more. Tonally, the new movie is a lot darker than the original, which I do think was a great choice. Save the Green Planet was a prediction in a way, and because those things have now become more real, it is a darker idea to wrap our heads around. We are living these things now. But in 2003, Lee Byung was not that common of a person. But today, we know a lot of Teddys. They are all over the internet. But I feel like this is where being timely isn't always as effective as being timeless. The film now is just reinforcing things that we already know. And if you're going to do that, I think you have to have a new perspective and or some nuance, and I just didn't like the nuance that they added. Save the Green Planet comes from a crazy person's perspective, Lee Byung. From the opening scene, it frames it in a way where we lean towards his view rather than an objective view. And as we dive deeper into the craziness, we start to see things from Soo-nee's perspective, and this is why her character is so important. Her leaving leaves us to try and make a decision of who's right, but you never fully shift towards the CEO's perspective. And Bugonia, I think, leaned way too much towards Michelle's perspective. Now, I'm sure you're wondering why I haven't talked about Dawn, Teddy's cousin, and the character who replaces Soo-nee. And to be honest, I haven't fully made up my mind about his character yet. I think the actor did a really great job, but I haven't fully digested his story, so I feel like it would be unfair to talk about that now. But Jang Joon-won, the original director, was an artist screaming out loud into the void and no one was listening. He had no filter because it was overall just a long shot at a movie and people were not ready for it, so it never landed. And now Yorgos had a chance to do the same. Take the message from the original and now have the world's attention. And does he have to do that? No. Does every movie have to say something? No. This can just be a good entertaining movie, but it bleeds through the screen that he is trying to comment on so many things. You can feel the profound artistry brain being on full blast while he was making this. And just look at what people are saying. I mean, there are a lot of think pieces on this movie. And I think that's why I have such a problem with it. For me, it truly feels like a dumbed down version. This isn't just Yorgos coming out with a crazy, wacky story. This is obviously a message-driven, social commentary piece that is clearly meant to be looked at as highbrow, thought-provoking media. But for over 2 decades, we've already been thinking about it. So yeah, at the end of the day, I'm being a hater, I get it, and I could be totally wrong on this one. But I just love Save the Green Planet so much and wish it was getting the recognition that Bugonia is now getting instead. And for me, Yorgos made the original message into something different in this nihilistic, almost looking down upon us way that I just didn't like. I think it's interesting and thought-provoking to critique humanity and have this nihilistic perspective that's somewhat similar to the original. It wasn't the main focus in my opinion, but there are interesting and good messages there if you dig deeper. I honestly think this is just a case of right message, wrong messenger, and also wrong timing. Especially now, I don't need the elite and the rich, i.e. Hollywood, to be telling me about how the elite are the problem and that humanity, if it were looked at from an outside perspective like aliens, would look as bad as it is. We know that already. So if this is a warning for what's to come, say it with your whole chest then. Make this movie a full-on warning. That would be interesting. But don't weave in and out of different messages and never fully commit to one. I've talked about this in other videos, but the trend of the rich funding this type of content, dumbing it down, and then spoon-feeding it to us like we are stupid, is devaluing things like Save the Green Planet, which is a movie that takes so much more risks and speaks to the people. I mean, it's almost poetic that this script was taken, then altered by the writer of The Menu of all people, overshadowed the original message, and then became this, honestly, patronizing, hopeless critique. The things happening in this world are crazy, so we take on the perspective of a crazy person with Lee Byung. It feels crazy to be a human in today's age, but he tries to do what's right until he has reached his breaking point. We do see the goodness of humanity, but the focus is more on revolting against the evil powers. And Bugonia just feels like it's telling me, well, none of this really matters because we can be gone in an instant and humans are bad anyway. Did you know we live in a society? That kind of movie. It just felt like a cheap attempt overall, and again, very late to the party.